بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على خير الأنبياء والمرسلين وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى البيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. Dear brothers and sisters and viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another episode, which is the final episode of Ahlulbayt TV Live, where we are commemorating the martyrdom of Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. We've gone through all of the tragic events, the significant tragic events which occurred to Fatima Zahra from the time of the death of the Prophet all the way leading up to her burial, and even the reaction to her death. In the last episode we talked about, when I say we, I say me and my dear guest Haji Sajjad Jihad, which I'd like to introduce. Sajjad, assalamu alaikum. Once again, we'd like to thank you immensely for bringing in such academic research, as well as your own personal emotional attachment to Fatima Zahra. Salam Allah alayha. We talked about in the last episode the narrations regarding her becoming a shaheeda, an actual martyr, of course, because this was apparently quite a controversial subject. In any case, we delved into it, and we spoke about the fact that she was, and confirmed as she died a martyr. We talked about the attack. No, we talked about the fact that she was ill, and her health was deteriorating after the attack on her house. And then we talked about the significant companions who were involved in the tragic events, the fact that they came to Fatima Zahra to seek repentance and seek forgiveness from Fatima Zahra, in which she refused. And this was a clear message, an indication to the fact that this is truth and this is falsehood. I am clearly displeased with your actions, and I will be complaining to you and even praying against you. I'll be complaining to you to the Prophet, to tell him what his companions have done to me, as well as praying against you in my obligatory salah, my obligatory prayers, in which they left the room weeping or crying. Of course, we talked about we had little idea. We mentioned briefly actually the burial itself. Who was present, the will of Fatima Zahra. In any case, this was all in the past episode. This episode, inshallah, we'll be focusing more on the narrations regarding the burial, and the narrations of the reaction to the people. So one random night, and then it's announced that Fatima Zahra has been buried. And Imam Ali is very silent regarding this. Ahlulbayt are silent regarding this. So the reaction of the Khulafa, so the people that oppressed Fatima Zahra, now they don't have a chance to seek forgiveness again. So what is their current state? How are they feeling? The people who know of Fatima Zahra's status, the fact that she was the daughter of the Prophet, and she was so beloved by the Prophet. Again, she's buried. No one knows. Why she was buried again, no one knows. So the reaction of the people, and of course we'll talk about the legacy, all in this episode, inshallah, of Ahlulbayt TV Live. So Sajjad, the question arises, the fact that her burial, so the narrations that talk about her burial.
Ahsantum. As you mentioned before in the previous episode, we mentioned that Fatima Zahra was martyred. We talked about the narrations that say, from both sides, that the oppression of Fatima Zahra is the cause of her martyrdom.
Right.
Physical oppression and the oppression that was done against her in terms of the position of Ahlulbayt. And we have narrations from both sides, let's say from the school of Ahlulbayt and others, that the illness of Fatima Zahra was the cause of her death. We mentioned that in the previous episode. I'm aware that some of the viewers have requested some more detail on this. So we'll just try to quickly shoot through some of the sources. Ma'ani al-Akhbar, page 354. Riwayah from Sheikh Saduq, saying that when Fatima, her illness became grave, the women of the Ansar came and they asked how you felt. Ask Fatima Zahra how she felt, and she says, Wallah, she begins her speech, that I have turned away from your dunya, from your worldly affairs, and so on and so forth. So that is one. 2, Amali Tosi, volume 2, page 15. Al-Sharaif, volume 1, page 184. Amal al-Sheikh al-Mufid, page 281. Kanz al-Ummal, volume 13, page 676. Kifayat al-Athar, page 36.
Just a reminder, this is talking about what exactly?
This is as a request from the viewers about Fatima Zahra's illness being the cause of her death.
The illness. Okay.
And that she says during her illness that this is caused by the first and second Khalifa, and the oppression against me is what caused my death. And so again, I can go into detail, but I think viewers are encouraged to look up, especially with the school of Ahlulbayt, unanimity that Fatima died Shahida Mazluma. She died as a martyr and oppressed. Sheikh al-Saduq, Sayyid al-Murtada, Sheikh al-Saduq al-Ma'ali al-Akhbar, Sayyid Murtada, Shafi fil Imama. I can go into the exact page numbers and volume numbers, but viewers can look it up, inshallah. Sheikh al-Tusi, Talkhis al-Shafi, Ibn Shahr al-Shub fil Manaqib, Tajir al-I'tiqad, Nasir al-Din al-Tusi, Al-Allama al-Hilli, Kashf al-Murad, السيد حيدر العاملي الكشكول الشيخ علي بن يونس العاملي في صاد المستقيم المقدس الأردبيلي في حديقة الشيعة الشيخ محمد تقي المجلسي في روضة المتقين الشيخ صالح المازندراني في شرح الكفاية شرح الكافي ملا فيل الكاشاني في علم اليقين الشيخ المجلسي في معاد العقول. All of these, as we're listing, and the number goes up to at least 35, are saying that Fatima died as a result of her injuries. Fatima died a martyr. Fatima died oppressed. So now when we look into the details of her burial, we are concerned with looking at what message the burial was giving. And we are interested in why the burial happens in this way. So we referred viewers to, in the previous episode, to the documentary that is also being shown on Ahlulbayt TV, The Life of Fatima, and the link for that is ahlulbayt.tv/Life of Fatima. And in there we narrate how Fatima, the day of her death, the moment of her death, she tells Asma that I'm going to go and read the Quran. She sends al-Hasan and al-Husayn to Amir al-Mu'mineen in the mosque of the Prophet, and she spends her time in Salah reciting Quran. And then Asma does not hear her voice anymore. Asma enters, she sees Fatima has passed away. Al-Hasan and al-Husayn enter the house. They wish to see their mother. They find out that Fatima has died. They rush to Amir al-Mu'mineen.
The reciters usually pinpoint this part as
emotional. Yes, and this is a historical fact. We might use it on the minbar in terms of ta'ziyah, eulogy, mourning, but it is a historical fact. So in the documentary, alhamdulillah, we've been able to go through that narration. We are very keen, as I said in the previous episode, at looking at the methods Fatima Zahra has used through her death to give a message for the people of the time and for us today. And so in her death, we're concerned now with the narrations about the death of Fatima Zahra and the burial. We mentioned that the historians have differed on the dates. We gave references about the historians being unsure of the location of her death. Some that say she's buried next to the Prophet. Some say that she is buried between the minbar and the shrine of the Prophet, because there is a hadith saying that there is a part of paradise in this location between my minbar and my grave. And the other narration is that she's buried in Jannat al-Baqi', the Baqi' cemetery. Now, Bihar al-Anwar, volume 43, page 186, gives us the detail of all this, the exact moment of her death, the exact events in her death. And now we're interested in Marasim al-Tashyi' wa al-Dafn, the burial, the funeral procession. And so when Fatima Zahra had died, Amir al-Mu'mineen and the holy household, the Ahlulbayt, their voices were raised in weeping and mourning.
Okay.
so that people found out that Fatima had died. And so they came to the Ahlulbayt and gathered and all asked what is to be done. Again, I'm pointing viewers to volume 43 of Bihar volume, page 192. And so the people sat outside the house of Fatima Zahra by the door, and Medina was shaking. And nobody had seen a sadder day than that, and it was as if the Prophet had died.
Okay.
So this was a sad occasion. And the first and second Khalifa came, and I'm going from Bihar al-Anwar here, came to give Amir al-Mu'mineen their condolences, and they said, Ya al-Hasan, لا تسبقنا بالصلاة على ابنة رسول الله. Do not pray over the daughter of the Prophet before us.
Okay.
Why this specific request? First and foremost, because they were criticized for not turning up for the prayer of the death of the Prophet. They missed the prayer of the death of the Prophet.
Right.
They missed the burial of the Prophet.
Saqifa.
They were in the Saqifa, and so they missed the burial of the Prophet. And the prayers were given so that later on when they came, they had already missed the greatest event post the Prophet, which is his death. They missed that. And so they were criticized, how can you be the Khalifa if you didn't pray over the Prophet? The Prophet was prayed over by Amir al-Mu'mineen. And this is very significant to have an imam, a prophet, a leader, even in today's world, an alim, a king, whatever, some significant person. The funeral prayers are a very important point, not just an issue of prestige.
It's
significant. It's something for leadership, it's something for knowledge, it's something for showing that who is the most beloved person. There's a lot of factors involved. But to not even be there is a massive point. So they were heavily criticized for missing. And the second Khalifa at one point begins to say that the Prophet has not died. He threatens people because he did not want to admit that they missed the death of the Prophet. They weren't there at the moment. So here they are making a point to Ali ibn Abi Talib. That do not pray over the body of the janazah of Fatima without us. Don't rush to it without us.
Okay. So
they're making a point here that we want to take part in this. We don't want to seem that Fatima did not want us to be there.
Just to clarify. So this is now the reaction of the people?
This is the reaction immediately of the whole city to the news of the death of Fatima.
So this is the news of the death. So Imam Ali. So when the first Khalifa comes to, or the first and second Khalifa come to Imam Ali and tell them, don't pray for Fatima Zahra before us. Imam Ali obviously knows the answer. Or we're going to get onto that now?
Yes, exactly right. Exactly
okay,
right. And his response to this is he agrees for Salman to come out and announce to the people, saying that because Fatima had died before Maghrib, or Maghrib time. Fatima had died at Maghrib time, between Maghrib and Isha. And the people gathered immediately after when they heard the cries of the Ahlulbayt, when the news began to spread.
Surely the next day? The reaction of the people?
No, the people came immediately. The news spread because Amir al-Mu'mineen was told while he was in the mosque. He was told that Fatima, and the news spread, the cries, the tears, the wails, and everybody found out.
I see.
So they attended immediately, like I said, after this period between Maghrib and Isha. And Salman comes out to speak to the people and says to them that the burial of Fatima Zahra has been delayed. Go to your homes.
Right.
And in this way, the message has been that it's been delayed, but it doesn't mean that it's been delayed until tomorrow or whenever. It's just been delayed. And left to the people have assumed delayed means until the next day. So they all leave, the first and second Khalifa included, and Amir al-Mu'mineen again.
So sorry, what was the reaction to Imam Ali when they asked him, when the two caliphs asked
Well, that was it. Salman came out and said.
Oh, so that was the reaction.
The reaction was that Salman came out and says to the people that she's not going to be buried now.
Was there anything specifically said by Imam Ali?
No. Not the narrations are recorded here. Not what the evidence that I have with me. It could be that in other sources, but not what I'm reciting from.
Understand.
The people have now left. Amir al-Mu'mineen engages in the takfeen of Fatima Zahra. Asma is the one.
Quick question: was this done in the house?
This was done in the house.
In the house, okay.
of Fatima Zahra.
Right.
Again, Bihar, volume 43, page 179 gives us the details. And we mentioned this in documentary as well, the Taghsil of Fatima, the Takfeen of Fatima Zahra, how this occurred. And Amir al-Mu'mineen at this moment is a very sad occasion. He is now doing the Taghsil of Fatima Zahra, doing the rites of a dead person, the most beloved person. The Prophet had said that Fatima is my trust to you. I'm entrusting Fatima to you. So we can imagine Amir al-Mu'mineen's situation at this moment in time, where he was going to return Fatima to the Prophet, but not in the same condition that he received her. So we have to keep in mind that the references in historical text also has a sad emotional narration to it, a sad emotional context to it, that Fatima Zahra, the most beloved of the Prophet, is now going back, and Amir al-Mu'mineen at one point breaks down. And Asma says to him, what is occurred? He said, Fatima requested that I do the ghusl over her clothes. I can do the ghusl over her clothes. There was no need for me to pour water on her body directly. She says, over my clothes. I am tahara mutahara. I'm already purified. So do the taghsil without over my clothes. And he says, as I was doing the taghsil, I felt one of the ribs of Fatima Zahra was broken. I placed my hand on her side, and I could feel a part of her body was broken. So even when we go through some of these narrations, we have to keep in mind that Amir al-Mu'mineen suffered greatly, and being put in such a position where he sees, as you said previously, his wife attacked in such a manner, suffering in such a manner, yet continuing to do his duties and obligations, is not an easy thing to do.
Easy, no.
So Amir al-Mu'mineen then begins his ta'been, his eulogy of Fatima Zahra. He gives the salam over the Prophet. He gives the salam over Fatima Zahra. He says that she lived her life fully in the way of Allah. She supported the Prophet in his lifetime. She supported me in her, up until now. She stood in the face of oppression. She has been, and he mentions here that she was oppressed. I mean, when in his eulogy says, and he goes on to say that we give the Prophet our condolences, and we say to him that Fatima suffered, and you, O Rasulullah, are the one who is aware of this. So Fatima will now return to you, Rasulullah, and make you aware of all this. And begins the burial of Fatima Zahra. And the Amir al-Mu'mineen acts according to the wasiyah that we mentioned in the previous episode, that Fatima requests to be buried at night, when people would not know and people will not attend. And so Amir al-Mu'mineen gathers the Ahlulbayt and gathers the few companions that we mentioned, and he leaves carrying this wooden coffin that we mentioned previously as well, yes, with the very few members of the Ahlulbayt and their close companions to bury Fatima Zahra.
Right.
In my analysis, and I'm not in a position, of course, to make any great analysis, I'm a humble student of Islam, the burial of Fatima Zahra is most likely to have occurred at Baqi', because the fact that she requests a place where nobody would know, being buried next to the Prophet in the mosque of the Prophet would have attracted attention. It would be easy to have been found. There was an easy marker there.
Right.
And so in my personal humble opinion, I believe that she was buried in Baqi'. We can't pinpoint the location, but I do believe that she was buried in Baqi'. And that the fact that Amir al-Mu'mineen leaves to go somewhere where people aren't going to hear and going to be aware. And Baqi' was that sort of place. And it is today, and until today. We see that there's no graves. We see that there is no, homes, there is no habitation around Baqi'. It's a bit of a secluded kind of area. You wouldn't be aware of what was going on there unless you were in there directly, even until today. And so the narrations say that Fatima wanted to be buried
Where people can't see,
can't see
hear.
and can't hear, and could not attend.
So you have to travel somewhere.
So, yeah, so my personal opinion, and Baqi is quite a large expanse, so I personally believe that Fatima Zahra is buried in Baqi. And the request of Fatima helps us to understand why this is so.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry.
I had a question, Mama, but I'll ask it later.
And we refer again viewers to volume 43, pages 179 to 193. These give the details of the tashyi, and so the Emir makes a eulogy, ta'been, after doing the taghseel and takfeen of Fatima Zahra, and takes the very few private members to the burial of Fatima Zahra. And in there, he himself helps to dig the grave of Fatima Zahra, and he begins the procedure of burying Fatima Zahra.
And right hand side and
Ahsan,
whatever,
the exact sunnah of how we should bury people. And the people there are weeping. The people assembled, so her children, her companions,
Zainab, Hasan,
the people that she was most attached to, the people that were supported, which are very few, the small number of people who are really attached to Fatima Zahra. And Amir Mu'mineen completes the burial of Fatima Zahra and begins to eulogize her. He has a beautiful poem where he eulogizes Fatima Zahra, and he says, the death of Fatima after the death of the Prophet shows that friendship will never last a long time, that your companions and your friends will never last forever. Because how great a companion was the Prophet, yet we were separated. And now, how great a wife was Fatima, what a great husband-wife relationship, and even then we were separated. So he means to say that death comes to us all, and that we should not become overly attached to a physical, and let's say a relationship that is not aware of Allah being above us. That we should have our relationship such a way that we're both trying to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because inevitably you'll be separated. So you'll be separated from your car, your wealth, your children, your house, your job, everything that you have. So don't live your life attached to things in a material sense. Live your life knowing that you'll be separated from all of these, but at least when you turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you've done what you can.
Okay, so thank you very much. It's very extensive. The research was there. From what we've deduced is the initial reaction of the people of Medina as soon as Fatima Zahra was passed away, let's just say, because the news spread because Imam Ali was in the mosque. So we've talked extensively regarding the burial, and in your humble opinion, it's in Baqi' because of the fact that she specifically states in her will that she wanted to be buried in a place away from the eyesight and away from the hearing of the people. So I think in the next episode, after the break, we will talk about, so Fatima Zahra has been buried.
We'll talk about what happens immediately after.
Yes, so Imam Ali alayhi salam takes the family, goes back home. People now assuming that
the next day, the coming day,
is going to be the burial. So now comes the announcement, is the reaction. So stay tuned for the next
continuation.
The continuation. Thank you. The continuation of the martyrdom of Fatima Zahra. Stay tuned. We'll be back in about 3-4 minutes, inshallah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, and welcome back to the second segment of 3 segments of today's episode of Ahlulbayt TV Live, where we are commemorating the martyrdom of Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. We've talked extensively regarding the actual burial of Fatima Zahra, and I have with me our guest, Sajjad Jihad. Once again, Assalamu alaikum. We've talked extensively regarding the burial in terms of the hadiths and the narrations. We've given some opinions regarding the possibility of Fatima Zahra's grave being in Baqi' because of the fact that she didn't want, and she specifically said in her will that she didn't want anyone to see or hear the funeral procession. So now, which brings us on to the fact that Fatima Zahra has now been buried. Ali eulogizes his wife, and he takes his children and the rest of the Ahlulbayt back to the house. So people now wake up the next morning, assuming that Fatima Zahra hasn't been buried. So they go to the house of Fatima Zahra, and then what happens?
The people then the next day they assemble outside the house of of Fatima Zahra. And the news comes to them that Fatima had been buried yesterday night.
Who breaks the news?
In Bihar, the Bihar volume 43, page 199, it says فَبَلَغْهُمُ الْخَبَرْ أَنَّ عَزِيزَةَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ قَدْ دُفِنَتْ لَيْلًا وَسِرًّا. So the news reaches out to people without mentioning specifically who.
I think just a side note, that was a form of media, wasn't it? To get someone to, like a message, just to say from the Prophet, someone would stand in the middle of a crowd and report this in a very loud voice that the Prophet had said so and so. So it'll probably be the same situation here.
Exactly right. And probably multiple people as well had mentioned. So somebody would say to the ladies, somebody would say to the gentleman from the Muhajirin, someone would say to the gentleman from Ansar. So it is, as you said, a form of media, and we see that the Ahlulbayt practiced this extensively after Fatima Al-Husayn.
Yes.
That Fatima bint al-Husayn would, she was the youngest daughter, one of the young daughters of Imam Hussein. Later on in Medina, when she lived, she would gather the women of Medina and hold a majlis in her house. And she should keep up memory of Imam Hussein, also to inform them what happened. Some of the people genuinely did not know. Because not like today, things are all recorded, things are online, whatever you get hold of. In those days, it was very difficult to find out what was occurring. And we find out that Zainab, when she returns back to Medina, she begins Majaz. Imam Zain al-Abidin, why does he spend a lot of his days in commemoration of Imam Hussein? So that when people come up and say, Ibn Rasulullah, why are you crying? He can say, because I was there on the day that my brothers left and never came back. I saw my uncles being butchered. I saw our tents being burnt. He would be able to recount the collection. So yes, part of it is telling people, that was a form of media, telling people what had happened.
Announcement, okay.
So Amir al-Mu'mineen, and again, Bihar al here tends to agree with the theory that Fatima Zahra is buried in Baqi.
Okay, so this is more proof.
And says that Amir al-Mu'mineen had made, in one of these narrations say that he had made 7 false graves. Another says that he made 40 false graves.
I was just about to say, because if there was one grave in Baqi', it would be quite obvious that a new grave had been dug up because of the dust and everything and the soil. So it would have been wise to make 6 or 7.
And exactly what Amir means.
Okay, perfect.
The narration here says either 7 or 40, different on what was said, so that people could not distinguish the place where Fatima was buried in. And so when the news now spreads to the Medina that Fatima has already been buried, and now this is the second time, or people of Medina, specifically the first 2 Khulafa, that you've missed
the burial,
the death, burial, and salat over the 2 most significant people, the Prophet and Fatima Zahra. So there begins, narrations say that there begins questioning amongst the people. Why did they bury her at night? Why weren't we there? How come the first Khalifa, head of government, remember, this is also a part of it is rules and procedures. You have a head of state, you have whatever you want to call him, president, prime minister, Khalifa, whatever you want to mention, who is supposed to decide on these affairs, who says what time and what place and who leads what, totally ignorant of all this. And,
oblivious.
Left out of it on purpose, done on purpose. And so they again turn amongst each other and say, well, Fatima was not happy with us. Fatima was not happy with the first Khalifa, and the people themselves begin to blame each other. You see, to her death, she was not going to give us a chance. To her death, she wasn't going to give a chance to us to turn some of the pages of history. Because had you turned the situation around and said, the first Khalifa attended her funeral, he was there at her burial,
so
he took part, he cried, he wept, he eulogized, the people of Medina sat there, they had a majlis, they visited the shrine of Fatima. The situation, when you look at the page of history, you would turn back the khutbah, Saqifa, Fadak, Takunas would be just something like this. You just turn the page over it. You'd say, well, look at the Muslims, they were all upset at her death. But instead, Fatima has not allowed us to turn the page like that. She's held it like this. She's prevented people from saying,
it's an issue, okay, it happened,
can't be done.
Turn the page. Now it can't be done.
And the people at that time blamed each other immediately on hearing this news. Now this forced, and the narration continues, this forced the فَقَالَ بَعْضُهُمْ فأشكل says here وقالوا ولام بعضهم بعضا. La means they criticized each other.
Okay.
They blamed each other, the people that were assembled. وقالوا لن يخلف نبيكم إلا بنتا واحدة.
Subhanallah.
Again, this is also pointing out how significant Fatima was.
So
the Prophet has left only one child, only one daughter, one person left behind from the Prophets. تموت وتدفن ولم تحضروا وفاتها والصلاة عليها ولا تعرفون قبرها.
Subhanallah.
She dies, and you weren't there at her death because the people weren't there. They found out about her death, but they weren't there at the moment she dies. And tudfan, she's buried, and you don't attend her janazah, or the prayer over her, and you don't know where she's buried. So
these are major blows.
These are these are pointing out to the fact that, and this is done on purpose to you. That means what have you done to her to deserve this? At this point, the first and second Khalifa, specifically after they requested Ali ibn Abi Talib to make sure that he does not pray, they over the Fatima Zahra, as we mentioned.
Right, yes, I did in the previous
segment. They are angry at this. And so some of them begin to cry out, let us go and find the grave of Fatima Zahra. So they lead the وروي أن أبا بكر وعمر أقبل والناس يريدون الصلاة على فاطمة. They came to Baqi and they want to pray over the body of Fatima Zahra. They're led by the first Caliph. فقال المقداد is one of the companions of Amir al-Mu'minin. قد دفنا فاطمة البارحة. We have buried Fatima yesterday. فالتفت عمر إلى أبي بكر فقال ألم أقل لك إنهم سيفعلون. Didn't I tell you this is what they were going to do?
Yeah.
So they had a feeling that this is what was going to happen to them. قال العباس the uncle of Amir al-Mu'minin and the Prophet al-Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib إنها أوصت أن لا تصلي عليها. She has made it in her will. We're not doing it out of spite. We're not doing it to make you look bad.
And the grammar wise, صليا means jewel.
Yes.
So these two.
It's a response to these two.
Yeah.
إنها أوصت أن لا تصلي عليها. فقال عمر لا تتركون يا بني هاشم حسدكم القديم لنا أبدا إن هذه الضغائن التي في صدوركم لن تذهب ولقد هممت أن أنبش قبرها فأصلي عليها. He basically says, well, this is part of your spite. Al-Abbas is saying, well, Fatima has put this in her will. We're not doing it spitefully. So even if anyone wanted to bring you along, Fatima is prevented from doing so. Your wasiyah is an obligation.
Yeah.
It's something that we have to act upon. So if I give you a wasiyah that you have to give my house, for example, in the part of the world that I'm allowed to, or part of whatever, I leave this for you, or I say to you in my will that the executor of the will is my eldest son, and I request that you bury me in so and so location.
Yeah.
It is an obligation on you to carry it out. You must do so.
For example, you're living in London, and you request to be buried in Najaf.
Yep.
It's incumbent on me.
As much as you can, you have to do it, because my wasiyah is enough. It's something that you must carry out, you must execute.
Right.
And so even if anyone wanted to bring the first Khalifa along,
he couldn't.
The wasiyah of Fatima. So now the second Khalifa is saying, no, actually it's your spite towards us. You did this spitefully. And
so that's what I was saying. The first two Khalifas are saying you're doing
this. No, you're doing it as spite. You're doing it to make us look bad.
Okay.
But Al-Abbas and Amir al-Mu'minin beforehand have already made clear that Fatima's wasiyah is what's most important. Fatima has a point to make. Not being spiteful. There is a reason behind this. And so the second Khalifa says, وَاللَّهَ لَقَدْ هَمَمْتُ أَنْ أَنْبِشْ قَبْرَهَا فَأُصَلِّي عَلَيْهَا. Bihar 43, again, page 199. I have desired to bring her out of the grave and to pray over her. وصل خبر محاولات القوم لنبش القبر إلى الإمام علي فلبس القباء الأصفر الذي كان يلبسه في الحروب وحمل سيفه ذا الفقار وقد أحمرت عيناه ودرت أوداجه من شدة الغضب وقصد نحو البقيع. So the news of this, that people were now looking through these false graves, they were now willing to dig up, reached Amir al-Mu'minin. One of these, probably al-Abbas or al-Muqtad, reported this to Amir al-Mu'minin. And so he put on his yellow helmet or cap, which is the one that he only used to wear when he used to go on jihad, into battle. And he took hold of his sword, the fiqar that the Prophet had given to him, and his eyes had turned red
with anger.
And his veins could be seen on his head. the anger of Amir could be seen, and he rushed towards al-Baqi'.
Subhanallah.
And now the narration says, the people began to cry out that Ali is coming to Baqi'. So the people ran ahead to inform them that Ali is rushing towards you to Baqi'.
Look out.
ونادى مناديهم هذا علي بن أبي طالب قد أقبل كما ترونه يقسم بالله لئن حول من هذه القبور حجر ليطعن السيف في رقاب الآمرين فقال رجل ما لك يا أبا الحسن والله أنهم بشن قبرها ونصلين عليها فضرب علي بيده إلى جوامع ثوب الرجل وهزه ثم ضرب به إلى الأرض وقالوا يا ابن السوداء أما حقي فقد تركته مخافة أن يرتد الناس عن دينهم وأما قبر فاطمة فوالذي نفس علي بيده لأن رمت أصحابك شيئا من ذلك لأسقين الأرض من دمائكم.
Let's break that down.
So to translate this, when the people found out that Ali was coming towards the Baqi', one of them began to cry out that Ali is coming towards you in a way that he goes out to battle.
Right.
He's coming here to, in a way, he's threatening violence. And so
just so it's clear, this is the first time that Ali is now taking a firm stance regarding Fatima Zahra and a tragedy.
Yes. So if we
so now he's worn the war garments and he is now threatening violence. He's threatening violence regarding the situation.
Because we at the outset of this show we talked about what was going to be the reaction of the people to the death of Fatima. So now we have the reaction of the people to the death of Fatima and the reaction of the Khulafa.
Right.
Was that they did not want to put themselves in a position where they would be blamed. So they reacted by saying, well, we're going to attend the death of Fatima, the burial of Fatima.
Whether you like or not, we're going to attend the burial of Fatima.
And the janazah of Fatima will pray over them to record that in history that we died, we wept, we eulogized, we were upset too at her death, we weren't happy with the situation, we want to make a record. So that is what they're going to do. Now here's Amir al-Mu'minin's reaction. So this man, this crier enters Baqi' and says, look, Ali ibn Abi Talib is coming to you in a way that he's threatening violence. And Ali, and so Imam Amir al-Mu'minin then makes a statement saying, Wallah, if anybody removes any of these graves or stones around the grave or messes around with these graves, whoever orders this will be killed. So it's very specific saying whoever orders this, because the people are ordering out the first Khalifa.
Okay.
So now this is a threat towards specifically the first Khalifa. That if you order them to do this,
there's bloodshed.
There is bloodshed here. And so the second Khalifa says, Malaka ya Abu al-Hasan.
This is the second Khalifa.
Second Khalifa saying, what do you want, Abu al-Hasan? We wish to pray over the body of Fatima Zahra, saying that despite your threat, we're going to go ahead.
Yeah.
So Ali ibn Abi Talib grabs hold of second Khalifa here,
shakes him a couple of times.
Shakes him and throws him to the ground, and said, "Look, as for my haqq,
my right,
me being my right, me being the successor of the Prophet, I have left it now to you. تركته مخافة, out of fear that the people would turn back on religion." And we've explained in the documentary and we've explained in other shows that Amir al-Mu'minin cares about Islam more than his right.
Right.
The whole point of him being Khalifa is to serve Islam, not for him to assume a position of authority. And we said immediately after the death of the Prophet, anybody who enters Medina, if he sees the cousin of the Prophet fighting the companions of the Prophet, so who could succeed the Prophet, will say, what kind of religion is this? Yeah?
Yeah.
Man has just died and these people are fighting for, it's immediately a power struggle. Those who are recent Muslims will also say, subhanAllah, what kind of religion is this? It's like all the other religions, like all the other kingdoms, it's like all the other things we've seen and heard of before. Man dies, these people fight over his
fighting over the power,
succession, power, wealth, whatever you want to call it.
But he was very clear in his stance, Imam Ali.
Imam Ali says, yeah.
It's not an issue of assuming power.
And here he's saying, well, I left the Khilafah, I left it for you guys, because if I fight, there's going to be a fight for it. It's not going to be a war of words, there's going to be a fight for it. If I fight, then immediately it's going to lead to people saying, well, innocent people will die. Some people that were already given bay'ah to the first Khalifa, innocent people will die. This happens in warfare. People who have nothing to do with it will die. And this instance will have people leaving Islam, because you have some people who support you, you have some people willing to fight for you, I have some people who are willing to fight for me, and then bloodshed breaks out. Then my haqq becomes less important than saving the blood of the Muslims.
Right. So back to this point now.
So he says, my haqq I have left for you because I fear for the Muslims.
Yeah.
وَأَمَّا قَبْرَ فَاطِمَةَ But, and here's a big but here, but regarding the death of Fatima and the grave of Fatima, he has an oath here. So he swears by Allah. He says, I swear that if you or your companions or your friends do anything to
even attempt to find the grave or
find
the
grave of
stone,
Fatima at this moment in time, then I will shed your blood. Everyone is very, very specific, very blunt, very direct. He says, I will shed your blood. So the first Khalifa says, Ya al-Hasan, leave him alone. Don't threaten him anymore.
Who says this?
The first Khalifa says to Amir al-Mu'mineen, leave him alone. Saying to leave the second Khalifa alone and don't threaten him anymore. And we will not do it. We won't do anymore. And so the Imam left them now. Once he was told that they were not going to do this anymore, he left. And the reference for this is Dalal al-Imama al-Tabari, page 46 to 47.
So, just a question, was there any religious significance of Imam Ali taking this very hardline and violent stance?
Well, first of all, Nabsh al-Qabr, to dig up a grave, is haram, it's prohibited. Unless there is a reason that can be validated by a mujtahid of the time, for example, or there is something more important than hurmat al-Muslim, the preservation of the sanctity of the dead body. Unless something is more important, for example, someone's possession accidentally got buried in there, for example, someone's money by accident got buried in there. The person was pregnant, and it could be possible that the child is still, for example, alive. Right. The person is buried somewhere where there could be damage. For example, there could be a flood and the grave would be lost, or there could be a landslide in this grave and the body will be affected. So there are reasons.
Okay.
But initially, as a general rule, it is prohibited to go back. So that's number one. So Amir is acting according to the Sharia. Number two, Fatima had already, again, back to the issue of the will. She said, I don't want anyone not just to attend my janazah, to pray over me.
But, I mean, will that even equal violence? As in, does the fact that someone is going against, does the fact that there's a will and there's a wasiyah, and then Imam Ali's reaction, is that justified with violence?
Well, here Amir al-Mu'mineen is acting according to the Sharia. The Sharia has two constrictions on him here, two obligations. Number one,
wasiyah, and number two,
number
graves.
one, the grave is to be respected. So if you see purposely, so for example, robbery or murder, we have to prevent murder. We have to prevent murder. There is laws, whatever. If you see someone about to murder somebody, you
have to act.
And you're in a position to do something about it, you have to act.
Right.
If it means defending yourself or defending the other person, so be it. So the first obligation of Amir al-Mu'mineen is that the grave must be protected. And people are purposely desecrating this grave. You do what you must.
You do it, yes.
Number two, that Fatima's wasiyah is an obligation on Amir al-Mu'mineen as well. She's asked that she be buried in this way. These people wanted to change that around. He has to prevent. Now, possibly Amir al-Mu'mineen is using the threat. The threat enough is to deter. That's not.
Right.
Is he going to act upon it? Will he need to? Probably not. And we know the result. He did not need to. So sometimes it's also about the language and the means that you use.
Right.
So we're not going to look into would Amir al-Mu'mineen have fought and so on and so forth. We say, well, actually, he's the Hujjah of the time. He's acting in accordance with what Allah wants. He knows what he's doing. He's also acting according to what the Prophet would do, what Allah wants him to do.
Right.
In this position. Right. So at this point, the people return, and they're upset, and from then on, people say that the two most significant events that show the anger of Ahlulbayt have been recorded against the first and second Khalifa, and all the people of Medina as well.
So now what was the reaction of the two Khalifs?
Well, they returned, and there was a period of mourning and bitterness as well. Mourning for Medina generally, that they've lost Fatima bint Muhammad, this barakah, this
So now they genuinely cared.
The people of Medina were upset, not just at the death of Fatima, but that they lost out too personally. They didn't get a chance to be there and eulogize and weep, and they don't know where to weep, where to go. And the first and second Khalifa, this period proves troubling, because were they to move against Amir al-Mu'mineen, and people are mourning Fatima Zahra, it's an emotionally charged time. So they leave it for a while before then they force Amir al-Mu'minin into giving the bay'ah to the first Khalifa, because this is a sensitive period. And I think when we talk about, after the break inshallah, the legacy of Fatima Zahra, I think that there was so much wisdom in each of the actions that she has done. And so that today when we pick up the history books, we're able to get some more insight.
Absolutely amazing. I felt myself very engrossed with the situation. Well done, Hajj Sajjad. So that was the second segment in which we can introduce the fact that the burial occurred. The reaction was genuine sadness at the fact that the people of Medina, they've missed out on the burial of Fatima Zahra. However, the two Khalifas, now they realize the seriousness of the situation. In history, they weren't present for the burial of the Prophet and the burial of his daughter, so the two most significant people within a space of a couple of months, let's just say. So they tried to react to this situation by attempting to dig up the grave of Fatima Zahra. Imam Ali, here we see him upholding the religious significance. So the religious significance of Imam Ali's actions here, upholding the fact that the will was written, he needed to defend that, and the fact that Sharia was in play because of the fact that it's haram to dig up a grave. So therefore he took a hardline approach to these two Khalifas, and then there's a general sense of mourning in Medina. So I think the last segment will inshallah conclude. We'll conclude inshallah in the last segment regarding the legacy of Fatima Zahra, how each of her actions, each of the words that she spoke was words of wisdom, words of power, words that we can learn and take into our lives today. So that's the second segment done. Please stay tuned for the last segment, where we will be talking about the legacy of Fatima Zahra. Stay tuned, 3-4 minutes, we'll be back inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum dear viewers once again, and welcome to the last segment of what has been quite a roller coaster of emotions, extensive research and academic discussions regarding the life of Fatima Zahra after the death of her dear father, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We talked extensively regarding the significant and tragic events which occurred after the death of the Prophet, in which now we have led to the discussion regarding the legacy of Fatima Zahra. Of course, we are honoured to have the presence of Haji Sajjad with us, who has given so much of his time throughout these 8 episodes to talk about the life of Fatima Zahra. May Allah bless him, inshallah. The legacy of Fatima Zahra, what she left behind, narrations, the wisdom.
Ahsantum. I think legacy, we can look at it in 2 parts in terms of the messages she gives constantly through her life. As we mentioned, episode 1, the issue of Fadek, and then we moved on to the khutbah that she gave. And then we moved on to these discussions about the attack on her house, and today and the previous episode we talk about the death and burial of Fatima Zahra. So that's one legacy, we'll come to that. But the immediate legacy is that Fatima was a role model in terms of a daughter, a role model in terms of a wife, a role model in terms of a mother, a role model in terms of a Muslim, a role model in terms of a Muslim female, a role model in terms of supporting a cause, supporting an idea, supporting faith, supporting your family, supporting those who need. So that's one. And every time we look at Fatima Zahra, we see that she did all these perfectly. She acted all of these roles out perfectly. Also, Fatima Zahra left behind for us today her knowledge. And your question would be how? We have in the school of Ahlulbayt Musnad Fatima or Mushaf Fatima.
Interesting.
Unfortunately, some of the discussions have led to maybe miscommunication, maybe some propaganda against the school of Ahlulbayt, that this Mushaf of Fatima is the private secret Quran of the Shia. And this is unfortunately not true. The Ahlulbayt have explained what Mushaf Fatima is. Mushaf Fatima, because Amir al-Mu'mineen and Fatima Zahra were daily sessions of sitting with the Prophet, going through the Quran with him. The Prophet would sit with Amir al-Mu'mineen, and then Amir al-Mu'mineen would sit with Fatima Zahra, and sometimes with both. And he would say, this verse this verse that I received yesterday or today or a few days ago means so and so. It also means so and so. It also means so and so. It also means, and he gives the explanations of the verse. This word means this and this and this and this. This word can mean that, and he gives all the explanations. This verse was revealed at so and so time, at so and so place. This word about this is this person, the name of this person. So when the Quran says, for example, Abasa wa tawalla.
Right.
This Abasa is Fulan ibn Fulan. Amir al-Mu'mineen, Fatima Zahra would be sitting there writing this down.
I see.
Amir al-Mu'mineen would then ask, what about this? What if, what if I challenge this through the... And he would go through with the Prophet, trying to benefit as much as he can from the Prophet, to have an explanation, a thorough explanation of the Quran, understanding of the Quran, as the Prophet understood it. So that when Amir al-Mu'mineen says, "As'aluni qabla an tafquduni," ask me before you lose me. I know it. When he says in Safin, when the enemies carry the sword, the Quran on the spears, he says, "Ana al-Quran al-Natiq." I am the speaking Quran. You're carrying a silent Quran. I am the speaking Quran. I'm the Quran and more. I speak as well. I explain it for you. He says in Nahj al-Balagha, he says, anything on the Quran, I will tell you what was before it, what was in it, what was after it, who it is about. I can give you. Mus'haf Fatima is part of this. Is when Fatima would write down the Prophet's dictations about the verses of the Quran, her questions about this, and also the relation of this verse in the Quran to, for example, morals, the relation of this to politics, the relation of this verse to. So this is the word of Allah. How does this relate to economics? How does this relate to politics? And looking at all the various factors of life, how does these words of Allah? How do we put this into this? How do I put this into action?
Just a quick question for the viewers: where can this be found?
Now, Mus'haf Fatima, because immediately after the death of the Prophet, Amir al-Mu'mineen said, "I'm gathering the commentary on the Quran."
Right.
And he brought forward to specifically the third Khalifa. He brought forward to him the Quran. He said, "I've spent." At that time, it was around 15 years. He said, "I've spent around 15 years. This is the Quran that we should have amongst us."
This is Amir al-Mu'mineen.
This is Amir al-Mu'mineen. And the third Khalifa rejected it because of the sensitive information included. It had names, dates, places, who did what, and it was all there. So
this is the commentary, not the actual Quran.
This is the Quran with the commentary, and annotations.
Okay.
And the third Khalifa said, "Well, thank you, but no thank you. We're going to look at something which just includes the verses and ayat without this additional information." The explanation, the official explanation was that we don't want people to get confused between what is commentary and what is the verse. Obviously, I mean, arranged in such a way that is obviously what is the word of Allah, what is the commentary. As we have today, we have a hamish, a margin, so the commentary is underneath the verse. But really the reason was that it was too sensitive, the information in this. So Amir al-Mu'mineen then took this back and he said, this will never be seen again. And it said that the Ahlulbayt passed down this Mus'haf Fatima, this commentary of the Quran by Amir al-Mu'mineen, to the Imams. And it is with the 12th Imam, Al-Hujjah, Ajjallahu Farajah al-Sharif, Salamullah alayhi wa alayhim ajma'een, and that it's not being given to the people generally.
So this is where the controversy happens.
So the commentary is Ahsan is being that there is another Quran the Shia have. Well, amongst us, we the Ahlulbayt, we don't have it in our hands. We the followers.
The followers, yeah.
We don't have it amongst us.
No.
The Ahlulbayt themselves do. It is for their benefit, for their purposes. The Muslim Ummah lost by not having this Mus'haf Fatima. But this is one of the, when we're talking about the legacies, we say this is one of the legacies of Fatima Zahra. She left behind this work that has been passed down to al-Hasan, al-Husayn, and all the Imams, and probably the close companions of the Ahlulbayt benefited from this as well. Imagine recording what all the dictations of the Prophet, how, not just the verse, because the Quran, what it is what the Prophet told us. Right? What we have today, what the Quran, is what the Prophet told us Allah told him. Imagine you'd been able to get all that context around it. How powerful would this be today? So, unfortunately, the Muslims don't have it at large, but this is one of the legacies, and the Ahlulbayt benefit from it, the Imams benefited from it, and possibly their students and their companions.
Right.
So this is one legacy. Another legacy is the hadith that she's left. We have at least at least 29 different people who narrated from Fatima Zahra. Number 1, Ibn Abi Malika. Number 2, Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. Number 3, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. Number 4, Abu Huraira. Number 5, Asma bint Umays. Number 6, Kulthum, her daughter. Number 7, Bashir bin Zayd. Number 8, Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari. Number 9, al-Hasan, her son. Number 10, al-Husayn, her son. Number 11, al-Hakam ibn Abi Na'im. Number 12, Rabi'i ibn Kharrash. Number 13, Zainab bint Abi Rafi'. Number 14, Zainab bint Ali ibn Abi Talib. 15, Salman al-Farsi. 16, Sahl bin Sa'ad. 17, Shabib bin Abi Rafi'. 18, Al-Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib. 19, Abdullah ibn al-Hasan. 20, Abdullah ibn al-Abbas. 21, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. 22, Ali ibn Abi Talib. 23, Ali ibn al-Husayn. 24, Awana ibn al-Hakam. 25, Fatima bint al-Husayn. 26, Al-Qasim ibn Abi Sa'id al-Khudri. 27, Harun ibn Kharija. 28, Hisham ibn Muhammad. 29, Yazid ibn Abd al-Malik.
Just a quick question. You said Ali ibn Hussein?
Yes. So he narrates, possibly through intermediary, from Fatima Zahra. So these are people who have a hadith from Fatima Zahra.
Okay.
So he might not have heard it himself.
Yeah.
He wasn't alive at the time.
No.
But through an intermediary. So either through Amir or...
Right.
But they narrate a hadith. Sometimes the intermediary is not narrated. So Amir al-Mu'minin says, Imam Zayn al-Abidin says, a hadith from Fatima says so-and-so. He doesn't mention who he heard it from. Possibly it is either Ilm al-Ghayb, or he had heard it from someone, one of the either the Imams or the companions, without mentioning. But he narrates this hadith from Fatima Zahra. Right. So these are 29. Anybody interested can look it up in the various works of Rijal and Hadith. So she leaves behind a significant number of hadith that the Ahlulbayt and the school of Ahlulbayt are able to benefit from. She leaves behind her dua. What you have in your hand. What is this called?
Tasbih.
Tasbih of
Fatima Zahra.
Fatima Zahra.
Yeah.
Why? Because this is a method of counting the 34 times Allahu Akbar, 33 times Alhamdulillah, 33 times Subhanallah. That the Prophet taught Fatima. Fatima went to him with al-Hasan and al-Husayn to complain, saying, look, we don't have enough to survive on. Our lives are very difficult. And the Prophet said, I will give you something that will make your life and your akhirah much better.
SubhanAllah.
And she took back this tasbih and she would do it after every salah, every single day. This became known as tasbih Fatima Zahra. And these rosaries that we have today, these beads that we count with, are for the tasbih Fatima Zahra. So that is one thing only. We have the dua, and this has been narrated in the books of dua, the dua that the Imams have narrated from Fatima Zahra. So this is a legacy as well that we can benefit, that 1400 years after her death we benefit from.
Yeah.
We also have from Fatima Zahra, salamullah alayha, her behaviors, her actions that when today we look at her life, we could say, in such and such a situation, I should do so and so. It's like putting behind an instruction manual for you.
Right.
Saying that, okay, when I'm faced with oppression, what shall I do? When somebody does so and so to me, how do I? When somebody takes something that belongs to me, when somebody attacks my family, what shall I do? When I see people going astray, and Fatima Zahra has left behind this manual.
SubhanAllah.
You look at it and say, okay, situation, I do this. So, or Fatima did this. Or, you learn from it.
And since she's a ma'asuma, then it's obviously much more credible.
Ahsant.
Yeah.
And because she's a female, it also gives a figure for all the female Muslims out there, all our sisters, inshallah. It makes it easier.
Yeah.
Sometimes we say, well, I'm a woman, what can I do? Fatima educated all the people of Medina. She giving that beautiful khutbah that she gave, and we've explained it in the previous episodes, a beautiful khutbah that I could spend maybe 50 episodes on, maybe 100 episodes on it, to explain the khutbah properly. And that explains aqaid, practices, usul and furu' ad-din, akhlaq, secrets of worship, why Allah told us to pray, why Allah told us to fight. In detail, she reveals all that in her khutbah. So for our sisters, female Muslims out there, they can look at the life of Fatima and they see a manual in front of them, how to behave in certain situations, so that you cannot say I'm limited by being a female.
No.
This is a situation where men could do the job, I cannot, because actually no, Fatima Zahra did the job too. Here is how to do it. Here is the way. Look at the way she entered the mosque with a group.
Even when you have such a personality as Amir al-Mu'mineen, who was given his own specific role. It was Fatima Zahra who actually had to stand up and take all the, all the tragedies and stuff.
Exactly right. So
as a woman as well.
Exactly right. So there is that manual left behind, a legacy. So that I really practically can say that is a manual that she left behind. I wish that somebody, inshallah, one day will be able to author this manual. And call it these various categories. How to behave when somebody takes away of your possessions.
Right.
How to be, literally like that. A practical step by step. Say, look, Fatima did this, you should do this. I would be really interested and grateful if somebody's able to start this project. Another legacy of Fatima Zahra is the adab, which in Arabic translates to literature, regarding her eulogies, the shi'r that she had, the poems that she left behind. Because even in her poems, they're very rich, they're very eloquent, and they have a lot of meaning to it. And don't forget, the spoken word at that time was the premier form of communication.
Right.
The Quran is essentially spoken word.
Yeah.
And so the poems of Fatima Zahra had an effect. And today when we look at the poems of Fatima Zahra, all the people that recite in the minbar, they've memorized the poems of Fatima Zahra. They use them because they're effective, they're eloquent, they're to the point. And also and part of this the legacy of literature is the two speeches, especially the first one, the FedEx speech.
The FedEx speech.
Where, as I said, the amount of knowledge, the eloquence there is astounding. If you wanted to see somebody who truly knows the Quran inside out, truly knows Islam inside out, it's on display there. So these are all legacies of Fatima Zahra. Now, I know we're concluding the show. I know that our focus on today's episode has been about the death and burial of Fatima Zahra. The legacy in her oppression, or the legacy in the actions that she took after the death of the Prophet, at each point she was very, very careful to leave behind a message. In her burial, the way it happened, she left behind a message. How she welcomed people into her house, she left behind a message. Where she chooses to be buried, the time, how she gives the khutbah, the Falaq khutbah, a message. How she argues with the first Khalifa, there is a message. How she raises her children, a message. How she behaves with her husband, another message. The manner in which she's buried, she requests a coffin. Right?
To request a coffin,
Even that is a message. So we say, well, there's a huge legacy left behind in just these final few days, these few weeks, maybe a couple of months, as you mentioned. There is a huge amount of messages that we benefit from today. So that when we open the book into the life of Fatima Zahra, we see a ton of information. We look and we say, Fatima Zahra made sure that when we look at this, as you said, sometimes controversial part of history, we open up the books and we say, where's the truth? Well, Fatima has exposed the truth very clearly. Very, very clearly. What Fatima says must be the truth. We're not going to go against the Quran. She says, the Quran says, I've been purified. I can't lie. The Quran says so. The Prophet says, Fatima minni. Can a liar be part of the Prophet? Mustahil. No. Impossible. So only something good can be part of the Prophet. Right. Correct? Right. And Fatima is part of the Prophet. The Prophet says, Fatima bad'atu minni. The Prophet says in his hadith. So again, that adds up here. So now whatever Fatima says and does, or does not do, is the truth in the haq. Everything opposed to this or against this is the batil. Right. All of Fatima's actions have made this clear for us. She argues for Fadak. She argues for the Khilafah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. She withstands an attack against her house. She asked to die and be buried in a particular way. This is the truth. What's gone against this? People who did not attend the burial. People who she was not happy with, she did not want to meet with, who did not give her haqq, who did not respond to her with any evidence in her khutbah, and so on and so forth, who did not give back the power and the authority to Amir al-Mu'mineen.
Dig up her grave. In a desperate attempt, for example, try to appease the situation.
So, just to wrap up, I encourage viewers, I encourage all the schools, adherents of all the schools, non-Muslims alike as well, inshallah. I pray and I wish and I really encourage, if anybody wants to really work on unity, if anybody wants to be honest with themselves as to what Islam is about, please read. Open up books of biography, open up books of history, open up the books of hadith, open up the books of tafsir, please read. The more you read, the more you come to find out where the truth is. The more you read, the more inshallah that we have some framework to work with. if I can look it up and I can agree that this is exactly what happened to Fatima Zahra, that's a step forward. And then we could take it from there, inshallah. And that's what the purpose of the show has been, to work on references and sources, inshallah.
So Jajiyad, you have been immense in these 8 episodes. Truly, truly, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and all the viewers to pray for you and to bless you, and inshallah Fatima Zahra stands the Day of Judgment and helps you on the Day of Judgment, inshallah. By the blessings of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, dear viewers. Fatima Zahra, although cannot be confined to 8 episodes, that's I assure you, but the volumes and the volumes of books and the literature that have been written about Fatima Zahra, we have tried to uncover within the last 8 episodes. Once again, we'd like to thank Jajiyad, Haji Jajiyad, for agreeing to come onto the show and to speak about the tragic events which occurred to Fatima Zahra from an academic and totally academic point of view, in which we delve into the books of hadith and the books of literature to find out exactly what happened, as history stated, to Fatima Zahra from the time of her death all the way to her burial, and what happened after her burial. I think it's probably befitting that we end with just a quick poem. It won't be recited in any way, shape or form. A poem by Nouri Sardar to wrap up the situation. Nouri says, "The Lord created the foundations of heaven. The Lord created the foundations of heaven. With it he gave a gift to all of creation. An angel wrapped in the sense of the Lord's wisdom. An angel wrapped in the sense of the Lord's wisdom. This gift was called Fatima, leader of women. She is a proof against oppressors and evil. She is a proof against oppressors and evil. Those who have her love are immune to the devil. The whole world knows her scent as a scent of angels, the unhidden secret, the true Holy Grail. Everything that exists takes Zahra as a guide. Everything that exists takes Zahra as a guide. We take from her like sand is taken by the tide. Her prayer and patience shows how devils are defied. Every single good deed by Fatima abides. Every single good deed by Fatima abides." Thank you very much for watching the show. Dear viewers, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.